this is a monster that he has to take on. And I know that he has a 30-day plan and a 60-day plan and a 90-day plan. And I want to be there on day one. And I want to help the Kennedy administration hit the ground running. And I believe that coordinating all the influencers and alternative journalists out there, not the ones working for CNN and MSNBC, but all those of us who have just on our own bootstrapped it and have been educated and articulate enough to grow a following out there. I think somebody inside the administration needs to work on getting the messages of the administration out to the people.
Ready to live at the higher vibrations, where peace, love, joy, and good health are the daily standard? That's what this show is all about. Welcome to Vibe. And here's your host, Robin Openshaw.
Hey everyone, Robin Openshaw here. Welcome to the Vibe Show. Today, I have a really exciting announcement, and that is that I've been nominated by the Bobby Kennedy team to join the Health and Human Services Administration in Washington, D.C., starting in January of 2025. Doesn't mean that I have a job with the administration yet. It means that I've been nominated, and I had some followers who asked me if they could nominate me, and I said, yes, but let's do it right. I looked through the nominations. I prayed about it. I thought about it a lot. I asked myself, would I be willing to go to Washington, D.C.? Would I be willing to spend like half my life there or more? And I came to a prayerful and thoughtful conclusion that I absolutely would. In fact, I don't know if you heard the speech that Bobby Kennedy gave when he stepped out of his presidential race and announced that he was joining the Trump campaign. He got to a point in his speech, which was one of the best speeches I've heard in my lifetime. I would expect nothing less of a Kennedy. But he kind of got emotional and he said, I told God that if I would be given the opportunity to make a difference, to have the influence and have the authority to clean up this corruption and make Americans healthy again and contribute to that whole mission, that I would give it everything I've got. I would give it the rest of my days. And I remember tears coming into my eyes as he said that, because I have told God the same thing. So when it was a week after the election, I didn't even know that there was this whole nomination thing going on, but somebody came to me wanting to nominate me. And by the time we got together all of the links and the bio and the resume, and I'd updated my resume to be appropriate for a position in the RFK Jr. administration, that day, the nominations were closed. So it was actually from the inside of the transition team for RFK Jr. that I was nominated after the nominations had closed. So I went through them all, and there's 4 friends of mine who were nominated and actually did a good job, like a thorough job. And I think that they would all be great in the administration. Dr. Brian Ardis, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Dr. Leeann Keneally in California. Haven't seen her in the medical freedom fight, but I know her. And she would be great. She runs the biggest alternative health cancer clinic in the US, and she's in California. So I don't know how that would work for any of them. I'm missing somebody. Who am I not thinking of? But they were the 4 who actually did a thorough job of actually submitting all the links to our body of work, to the evidence that we've been in the medical freedom fight. And, like, what has our work been? What books have we written? Whatever our work is, those 4, I think I'm missing somebody who Judy Mikovits. My interview of her in, I want to say 2020, maybe 2021, remains the most downloaded episode in my podcast's history. I noticed that she used it in her own nomination. So they may have nominated themselves, Dr. Tenpenny, and, I've texted with her and she told me that she was nominated, and Dr. Mikovits. I think they'd all be great. I think they'd be great as part of committees and as scientists and doctors speaking up on behalf of regaining our medical freedom, I think they would be great. Here's what I want to do, though. Part of what I bring to the table is that I would go to Washington and I would take my team of 15 people with me. Right? I used to have a bigger team, and in 2020, a bunch of them quit in solidarity. They didn't actually tell me they were leaving because I was taking a stand that was so counter narrative and speaking up for medical freedom, but they were just one part of what was to become a mass cancellation. And someone who follows me named Richard, who I am deeply grateful to for telling me about the nomination. He was the one who was going to lead up doing it, and then it closed. He said to me, just think, Robin, of all the hell that you've been through in the last 4.5 years. And he actually went through my Facebook posts and my Substack articles, and he compiled a whole bunch of them that he wanted to submit to the team for consideration of my nomination. He said, those things that you went through are now assets to you in applying to the RFK administration to tell them that you would be a good candidate. But what I want to do is, not only would I not ask for the taxpayers to pay my team of 15 people who have stood by me, all the ones who didn't leave in 2020, because they were so gobsmacked by boss ladies gone crazy and is saying the exact opposite of what the media is telling us. I started doing that in February of 2020. Before we even had patient zero, I was questioning it and showing data from, Chinese medical journals saying, hey, the death rate is not what we're being told in the media. Even though they're pointing at China and saying, oh my gosh, everyone's going to die. That's not what the Chinese medical journals are saying. This is actually going to be more like a flu. I started saying that February 27th of 2020. So anyway, I sometimes wonder if I would have the courage, if I would have known all the things that would happen to me. I'm glad nobody told me. Kind of like having kids, right? It's probably a good thing that nobody tells you how hard it's going to be, or else nobody would do it. But he made a really good point that the things that I've been through, we can make purpose of the pain. And maybe those things are assets, because nobody's been through more cancellation and attacks on our personal character and the media weaponized against them than Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy. And so, I've had plenty of media hit pieces on me. I've had just a small taste of what they've been through. But what I would like to do, besides the fact that with my appointment, if you vote for my appointment, and that's what I'm here to do, is to ask you to vote for it. I'll put the link down below to my nomination. And you do have to go through the process of registering on the site. The Trump Kennedy team put this site together. I don't necessarily love the site itself, but you have to register at the site, then you go into your email, and then you go back to the link that I'll share below and vote. So I would like for the Bobby Kennedy team to see that I have votes, and that these are votes of confidence from people who have seen my work of the last 4.5 years. If I've benefited your life by helping educate you about medical freedom and what was really going to arrive and be pushed on the American people as it rolled out, I hope that that's benefited your life. If so, I ask a favor that you go and vote for my nomination, because what I think that I could best do for the administration and the 15 people who work for me, who all have skill sets that I think that the Kennedy team needs, is that is a coordinated effort to work with the alt media and all the alternative journalists who are out there. I'm sure many of us have educated you over these last few years. I bet that just about everyone listening will nod or resonate with me saying we've lost confidence in mainstream media. We've seen that they don't give us information that they don't want us to have. They don't entertain any narratives different than agendas that may be fed to them by their sponsors, which is over 60% pharmaceutical companies. And so I think that you probably already know that RFK Jr.'s promise to the American people being appointed head of Health and Human Services, which puts him over the FDA and the CDC, is that he wants to end the regulatory capture where pharmaceutical companies have so much power that the regulatory agencies have basically become their puppets. He wants to get rid of hundreds of toxic ingredients in our foods, especially our processed foods. But gosh, we even have them being approved for our fruits and vegetables. I mean, I've done now 13 videos and blog posts on this appeal stuff that we can spray, like, polymers, plastic, garbage on our organic fruits and vegetables. Boy, that's when it really hits home for me because I avoid the junk food anyway, but I still don't want all of America eating these toxic chemicals that are in our food that are banned in lots of other countries. We have, I think, north of 100 ingredients that are put in our foods totally legally because our FDA hasn't banned them that are banned in Europe. So, you've probably seen Food Babe out there running a big campaign against Kellogg's. I don't think that once we get these toxic handful of ingredients out of Kellogg's processed cereals that they're going to be nutritious foods. But we really can't be having these known poisons in our foods. So that's another part of the RFK Jr. promise to the people is end the regulatory capture, get science back to being real science. It's just such a huge job what he has in front of him. I mean, the medical journals have been co-opted by this pharmaceutical industry. The science is for sale. If you don't go along with certain narratives, you don't get the grant money. This is a monster that he has to take on. And I know that he has a 30-day plan and a 60-day plan and a 90-day plan. And I want to be there on day one. And I want to help the Kennedy administration hit the ground running. And I believe that coordinating all the influencers and alternative journalists out there, not the ones working for CNN and MSNBC, but all those of us who have just on our own bootstrapped it and have been educated and articulate enough to grow a following out there. I think somebody inside the administration needs to work on getting the messages of the administration out to the people through all the unofficial channels that have become really, really popular. I mean, I'm trying to think who said it. It wasn't Rogan. That the Trump campaign, Donald Trump himself got almost 400 hours of time on podcasts during the campaign, whereas Kamala Harris got 4 hours. So let me say that again. Donald Trump got, I think it was like 392, almost 400 hours of podcast time, and Kamala Harris got 4. So I think that had everything to do with what the people are listening to. They're kind of sick of CNN. I mean, my mother and father-in-law listen to CNN, but they're pretty much immobilized. They're really in their final years. They're very injured by the vaccine. They listen to CNN, but that's because they don't go anywhere and they don't use the internet. Like the internet kind of just came and went and passed them by. So there are still people who are listening to mainstream media, but these aren't people who are going to be with us in 20 years and 40 years. And most of us who are actively using our critical thinking skills, we go elsewhere for our information. And there's still plenty of people out there who just don't know where to go for information. Like I have a good friend who was like an NPR listener, and like me, Gen X, we were the first generation to go quite liberal, quite woke. And that's what good people did. Good people were Democrats. Good people were liberals. And she was your typical Democrat, liberal to the core, listens to NPR and thought that's what sophisticated, educated people listen to. And then her son was autistic and she started to question the vaccines. And that was kind of like the entry point to start reconsidering all of this stuff. And so, she's my age. We graduated high school together, and I'll send her a channel that I listen to, and she's discovering new channels all the time. And she uses this as an example. Like my friend is amazing, and she introduces me to great information as well. But I'm just saying, there's a whole world of alternative media out there that's decentralized. Okay, just like I talked to you about how much I love Bitcoin for how it's decentralized. Unlike our central banks, where there's this chokehold on the lives of the people because of so much power centralized in one place, the media is getting very, very decentralized. And what's happening with Web 3.0 is just going to facilitate that further. And RFK Jr. and I are also super aligned on the decentralization of money. And right now, Bitcoin is about to hit $100,000. I mean, maybe it won't. Maybe it'll come back down and it'll have to retrace up. And that's a real resistance point. Once it goes past $100,000, I think it's going to, it's going to start to fly. There's countries that are going to be fighting over Bitcoin. It's getting to the point of the gamification of Bitcoin where I'm absolutely not surprised that RFK Jr. said he's moved most of his wealth into Bitcoin. I have too. I, as of last month, am worth more in Bitcoin than I am in real estate. And I've been a real estate investor since I was 21 years old. So I have the time. I'm young and senior level in my career. I'm talking to you like you're my future employer, because if I go to work for Health and Human Services and devote my time and energy to it, I would consider you to be my employer. But many of the completely amazing candidates being nominated are in their 60s and 70s. And I just want to submit to you. And I have a phone number of who I'm supposed to call in the Kennedy administration for my first interview. I want to submit that I'm in my 50s. I am senior level in my career and my knowledge set, but I still am super healthy, no diagnoses, nothing holding me back, no kids left at home. So I'm kind of the perfect age to go and contribute in a big way. So I would like to be part of leveraging the alternative media because I know that world. I know what influencers care about. I know how they think. I've been one for 18 years. Many of my colleagues call me the OG or NOG or original gangster in the in the health and wellness influencer space. I mean, when I started as a green smoothie girl online, I didn't know the word influencer. I don't know if that word existed yet, but I certainly didn't know that word and actually don't like that word. And it has a lot of negative connotations and it makes people think of, like Gen Z taking nonstop photos of themselves on the beach or whatever. That's obviously not the kind of influencer that I ever was or am now, but I just wanted to give you this news that I've been nominated. Ask for your 3 minutes or 2 minutes that'll take you to go vote. I'm sorry that you can't just go in and click vote, but they want them to be real people who actually care about nominating someone or voting for a nomination enough to go into your email inbox and whatever it is they send you there and then go vote. So I ask for your vote. I would like to help coordinate the messaging of the accomplishments of the RFK Jr. administration, as well as how alternative journalists in all of the channels, there's little tiny ones, there's people on YouTube who have a following of 5,000 people. We all have our different strengths. Okay, some people get a lot of attention online as health and wellness influencers because they're great writers. Some of them get a lot of attention because they're willing to swim upstream and counter popular narratives. Some of them get a lot of attention because they're really good looking. Some of them get a lot of attention because they're great on camera. They're super animated, super articulate. So whoever you follow, if you think about it, I probably just named some of the reasons why you follow them. They also tend to be educated in some way, in some subject matter related to health and wellness that you value, or else you wouldn't give them your time. So there's been some criticism of people who I think generally would agree with us about the importance of medical freedom, which I hadn't mentioned, but that's a third major objective I know of the Bobby Kennedy team is regaining the ground that we lost and reinforcing and guaranteeing medical freedom. Because we've really been through an onslaught the last several years, haven't we? And we all have people close to us whose health has tanked since their vaccines. I would say in my life, I mean, I know dozens of them, and I would say about half of them know it. They know exactly why they lost their health, or they're in constant pain, or they have neurological problems, or they have turbo cancer. And about half of them don't, and either deny it or just never talk about it. So you really have no idea whether they secretly wonder if that's what happened to their health or their cognitive abilities. Um, so there's some criticism of Bobby Kennedy for the fact that he's kind of quit talking about vaccines. I noticed that when he joined the Trump campaign. Actually, even before that, he'll talk more about regulatory capture and cleaning up the corruption, because I think that's where we can almost all of us come together on. I do not believe for one single minute that he has changed his views on vaccines, but he just knows he's never going to get in the media talking about vaccines, because that's how, when he threw his hat in the ring to run for president, that's what the immediate constant through line was for mainstream media, is to call him an anti-vaxxer. It's such a cheap shot, but it's so easy. And it really captivates the minds of most people. So, that word's losing its power. I think it's probably more than half of us in America who now identify to some extent with the whole concept of anti-vaccine. I used to bristle at it when people would call me an anti-vaxxer, but Bobby Kennedy's getting some criticism for saying I'm not an anti-vaxxer. It's like they want him to say I'm an anti-vaxxer and I'm proud. And while there's a part of me who would also love to say that, I think that if I were in his position, I would do the same, which is he still holds his convictions. He's not any more pro-vaccine than he was before. I mean, I've interviewed him twice on this show. This show you're listening to, you can search on iTunes, you can go to greensmoothiegirl.com, click on podcasts, search on RFK Jr., and listen to my 2 previous podcasts with him. You can go and listen to a completely amazing debate he did with maybe America's most famous attorney, Alan Dershowitz. I mean, people think this guy is a legend, and Bobby Kennedy went head to head with Alan Dershowitz on vaccines on the Valuetainment channel. Okay. Valuetainment has millions of viewers, and Patrick Bet David, who runs that channel, is amazing. I love listening to Patrick Bet David, Valuetainment. He's absolutely earned his, whatever it is, 5 million following channel. But this was before COVID that Alan Dershowitz and Bobby Kennedy debated vaccines, and Dershowitz really had nothing. And the whole, it's a spoiler alert here. Don't listen if you want to go listen to the debate yourself. But honestly, RFK Jr., in the most polite way possible, retaining his relationship with Alan Dershowitz, and he did have a relationship with Alan Dershowitz, completely mopped the floor with what little argument Dershowitz even had to put up, which is basically polio, smallpox, mic drop. That was basically the only point I heard Alan Dershowitz make in any meaningful way. And hey, I'd love to do that debate. I'm sure I'll never be in a debate with Alan Dershowitz, but I could completely dismantle that argument that we eliminated smallpox and polio with a vaccine. In either case, that's actually not true, and that's another subject for another day. But I think Bobby Kennedy is just being smart by not talking about being an anti-vaxxer. But at this point, when people call me that, I don't even care. When Fox News did a series of hit pieces on me in 2022, when I was running a medical freedom tour of 11 cities in 11 days here in Florida, they called me an anti-vaxxer, and 1,000 new people followed me on social media that day. So in a way, it's almost like the tide has turned. And by calling me an anti-vaxxer, it's almost a positive for me. I mean, there were billboards all up and down the I-15 corridor in Salt Lake County and Utah County, the most populated parts of Utah, saying Fox News investigates local businesswoman, green smoothie girl. And the funny thing is, it was literally 2 years after I had moved to Florida. I moved my business to Florida and I moved myself to Florida. So anyway, but they did that. And I believe that they did that because I was doing this medical freedom tour, and they pick out targets and they plan a campaign to harm your good name and plant doubts in people's minds who care about the message that you have been out there for years sharing. And that's what they did. And it's kind of backfiring. And that might be good news. It was still really, really painful because it was like one half truth and 10 lies, that whole campaign. But I would not lead with the vaccine issue either if I were Bobby Kennedy. I mean, he did one mainstream media interview. I believe that it was CNN. It could have been CBS. I'm pretty sure it's CNN. Did an interview, and they literally cut out almost an hour of the interview and said, they cut away and they said, we have censored this because the information that RFK Jr. was spreading is misinformation. Like, that's literally what they did to the entire conversation about vaccines. So that's what he's up against. So just give that as an example of what he's up against. The fact of the matter is, I had an experience in 2019. Some of you who maybe follow me on Facebook maybe saw it. If you were paying attention, you saw it, but it was almost like I consider it almost a blessing from God, as horrible as it was, and preparation for what was to come. It sort of gave me a thicker skin and showed me that I can do hard things even when an army of people are gunning for me. Of course, in 2020, there are more and more of us speaking up and disagreeing with the media narratives. But in 2019, I wrote a Facebook post. It was not on the Green Smoothie Girl page. It wasn't on my public figure page. It was on my own personal Facebook page, Robin Openshaw. And it was not very long. And it was about the flu vaccine. And it was just saying, do you know how the flu vaccine is made? Is that this year they're guessing at what the strains of flu will be that show up next year, which they have no way of knowing. So they're literally guessing. And there could be 100 different strains of the flu, but they pick like 4 of them. And then they build a product that's supposed to target those 4 strains that they guess at. And sometimes they're like 13% accurate, and sometimes they're 30% accurate. And, I have lots to say about the issues with the flu vaccine that destroyed 4 years of my life when I had to get it working in a hospital when I was in graduate school. But it was a pretty short post. And then I left Facebook and went to work and didn't look at Facebook for several hours. And when I came back, there were 1,600 super pro pharma, I'm going to call them trolls for lack of a better word, but basically people who are in some kind of group somewhere, and they all told each other, go attack this woman's post. But then when they were in comments in the post, by the time I saw it, there were like 1,600 comments. They were telling each other, hey, she writes books, go write negative reviews on her books, which they did. And they said, hey, she has a public figure page. It's Green Smoothie Girl. Go write terrible reviews on her public figure page. By the time I saw it, there were 33 negative reviews on the Green Smoothie Girl page. Some of them were saying things like, her products put me in the hospital with cyanide poisoning. I did eventually get Facebook to take that down. But these, like I said, I'm just going to call them trolls. These trolls actually put up another Facebook page called Alt Green Smoothie Girl. And they used a photo of me that we use in our content a lot. That's kind of like a professional headshot kind of photo. Well, it's really like a whole body shot. And they took my head off and they had a snake coming out of my body. And Facebook would not make them take the Alt Green Smoothie Girl page down, even though I told them this clearly violates your terms and conditions. The whole purpose of this page is to harass me. They wouldn't have them take it down. And ironically said it was because they have to honor their right to free speech. They did, however, make them take down the image of me with a snake coming out of my head. So that whole experience in 2019, there was a bunch of kind of minor media, but one of them was a pretty major media article. There was a bunch of hit pieces that came out of that. It just snowballed. And I had, Joe Mercola's former girlfriend, Erin Elizabeth, I had her texting me and saying, take down, you need to go deal with this. She said, there's millions of people on Twitter. Like, it's just going totally viral to like attack you. Your page is being attacked. Your followers are being attacked. So the way we dealt with it is I didn't even go on, at the time it was called Twitter, now X. I didn't even go on Twitter and look at any of it. I seriously doubt there were millions. That was probably an exaggeration, but what we did is we literally just took our page down for 30 days. If you take it down for one day longer than that, you lose your Twitter page, but we don't use Twitter X a whole lot anyway. So we just took our page down so that our followers there was going on. But there was one particular woman, one of the 33 people who wrote the awful reviews on my public figure page, who literally said to me, my claim to fame is this appearance on CNN where I talk about that my life's work, my mission in life is to attack parents who claim that their child died after a vaccine. So, I guess she feels like she's doing good work in the world because she so doesn't believe people whose baby gets a vaccine and then they have seizures and die. She so doesn't believe them that she's willing to harass them, write blog posts about them. I mean, this is kind of what we're up against. This is kind of how bad it is. So I would like to go work for the Kennedy administration to help, especially with messaging and not just talking points and doing what mainstream media does, which seems like they're all reading from the same script. You've seen those video mashups where 40 different local news stations are all saying the exact same words. I think there's a way to sort of duplicate Bobby Kennedy. I mean, everybody wants to have him on their show, right? I heard him say that there's literally thousands of requests from people to come on their show, and he has that voice dystonia thing. So he has to kind of preserve his voice. But I have lots of ideas for how to amplify his message and his agenda to clean up the corruption in everything that affects our health and wellness and the health and wellness of our children moving forward into the future. So I have never wanted to be in politics. I kind of can't believe I'm saying, please vote for me, but I would give it my all. And I believe that I would be an asset to the Kennedy administration. So to get their attention and to have a vote of confidence, please take a look at the link. Wherever you're hearing this, it'll be in the show notes or whatever down below. Please vote for me and please share this with friends if you feel like getting the right people on the Kennedy team to make the biggest impact possible in the next 4 years is a priority for you. And thank you so much for listening today, and I will see you next time.